This last weekend, I had a chance to go to Strategicon. It's a board game and war game and tabletop RPG convention that takes place out in LA. There's 3 of them that go on throughout the year. We went to the one that was just over this last weekend in February. It's called OrcCon. And it was a pretty big convention. I didn't expect it to actually be as big as it was. There was several different halls where things were happening. There was like places where board games were being played and war games were being played. Tabletop RPGs were being played. There was a lot of people playing games. But more than that, there was like a lot of people bringing their games that they are developing to like kind of play test them or to sell them. There were even some games that were in like early development or Kickstarter where you could kind of talk with the developer. So that was also really cool. There was a lot of interesting things going on at the convention that I didn't expect to be going on. And it was such a positive experience that I definitely want to go back to the one that's taking place in May and September if I can. But I want to actually show you some footage of the convention and explain to you some of the things going on in each of the places. And I'm going to do it in chronological order so you can kind of see. My cat almost fell off the couch, sorry. I'm going to go through in chronological order so you can see sort of what my day was at Strategicon, because this is Saturday, and on Saturday, like we were coming back because we'd already been on Friday. My son and I were coming back, but we were also bringing our friend Steven and his son Landon with us to the convention. So all of them were trying new games and playing things, and I'm trying to like run around and see everything, you know. So, and then I'm also trying to like shoot footage so that I can talk about it later. So I'm going to take you through. But every so often, I'm going to be interrupting what I'm doing to check up with my friends and see what they're doing. So jump in, sit down, get a drink or something, and I'll take you through Strategicon and my experience there, okay? This is the entrance to the convention. This first room we're walking in with the tables that have purple tablecloths, this is the swap meet for the convention. People have come here to sell their own private collections. They've brought books and TTRPGs and models and miniatures and old board games, and they're selling the stuff that they've bought over the years, or they might have a small collection of things that they've picked up and decided to resell them, but generally everything here is like private collections. I found this area fascinating to go through because there were so many games that I was looking at thinking, what is this? What's this game? What's Feudum? I have never seen this game before. I've never heard of this. What are these miniatures for? This swap meet felt like a treasure hunt. Looking through people's old collections of games that they were selling in various conditions was fascinating because there were so many games I'd just never heard of, and I was interested in all of them. You know, I just wanted to see what is this stuff you have, and why do you have it, and why did you collect it? But wait. I need to head over to the miniatures hall because Landon, Steven, and Bishop are all playing war games right now. I need to check up on them and see how things are going. So Landon and Steven started in a Warhammer Old World game, and they're playing against each other. This is the list of games that are going on in this room. This room is massive. There is a half of it that is dedicated to war games and another half that is dedicated to board games. The hall itself is a massive assembly hall. I don't think I actually have a shot showing the entire thing, but this should give you an idea of all the different war games that are going on. You can see the huge list here of games, and some of them are like learning to play. Some of them are like, you know, just actually people playing the games. But there's things going on throughout the entire day. So it's a pretty cool room. Landon and Steven are just getting started in Warhammer Old World. They're looking through their instructions and understanding their tape measures. There's a gentleman here who's explaining to them how the game works and how the roles work. All of it's a little complicated for them because Steven has probably never played a war game before, as far as I know, and Landon has played war games before, but never a rank and flank miniature game. So I'm just really happy that Steven and Landon have found a game that they're trying to play with each other, and you know, it was nice to have a person who was going to teach them how to play this game, and it didn't have to be me, you know. So I was so happy that they both decided to come to the convention, and now they can like learn how to play Warhammer from someone who knows the game well enough to teach them how to play. At this point, I feel pretty comfortable that they're going to be able to learn this thing, and the individual who is teaching them is versed in teaching new people how to play the game. So I'm going to move around and look at other stuff. Since this was my first convention, I didn't sign up to learn any games. I did sign us up for a Dungeons & Dragons like League Adventure game, but we didn't make the time for it, so I didn't get to actually go through with that. But There was so many games that were being taught here. I thought, okay, the next convention I come to, I'm probably going to try and sign up to learn a few, especially games I'm interested in. This Warhammer table was probably one of the more interesting things to me in the entire convention because it was a massive battle that spanned several games. I get like a larger shot here. You can actually see it going off in the distance there. But where those little red lines are individual tables. But these people are all playing one game against each other. So the person at one end of the table can eventually start to move over to the very far other end of the table and start taking each other's armies out. It was crazy to see this many models. I'm going to go back over and check on Landon and Steven, see how they're doing. And when I got here, I could see, like, okay, they're actually vested in the game. Like, they're both playing. They have some autonomy. They know what their units are doing. It seems like Landon has a helicopter that's been pestering Steven's guys, and Steven has managed to flank Landon's army. So they're both working well in the strategy of the game, and I was just really encouraged and excited that they were playing and that they understood, like, what they were doing. Because war games can be really intimidating for people, and I don't know, I was just really glad that there was someone here that was teaching them how to play the game from like a beginner's perspective, and they were doing a great job of doing it. So at this point, like, I feel comfortable kind of walking around and leaving them be, and I have no idea how long this is going to take, so I'm going to head back over to the swap meet hall and take my time looking through people's games. The swap meet hall, as I mentioned, was probably one of my favorite places in the convention. I found so many of these like archives of games to be like a treasure hunt. Just looking through the titles of games that people owned and trying to figure out, like, okay, is this interesting to me? Do I want this? There was a few people who actually had like crafts that they brought here. This guy's doing some sort of laser cutting, and he also makes chainmail. I find it interesting when there's like a meta connection to some sort of arts and crafts that links into tabletop RPGs and board games and war games. So I generally find it interesting, like, what sort of person makes a craft and then sells their craft at a convention. This booth in particular fascinated me because I didn't understand it, and the fact that someone has a crafting business with a meta aspect to it and they bring it to conventions was fascinating. I love these models. They were really cool. I hung out by these models for probably far too long. I think there was like the uniformity of them and the fact that like they were painted and well crafted. Like, I was trying to figure out if they were built, like did someone build these, or anyways, like they were very interesting to me. And again, this swap meet hall was probably one of my favorite places because it was just so cool to find these old collections. Here's someone had actually brought a massive collection of old tabletop RPGs. I think a few of them might have been war games and compendiums, but here I actually took some time just going through their collection. Like, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I want to know what they have because I kind of want to know like what they were interested in. And so like I'm going through a bunch of games, so like I don't know what any of these games are. I don't know what it's related to. But I'm looking to see if there's anything I recognize, or like, is there anything I've seen before or heard about? And since I've been kind of delving into tabletop RPGs, I've heard about a lot of different RPGs. And as I'm going through, I'm like, oh, White Wolf, I recognize that. Greyhawk, okay, I recognize that name. Dungeons & Dragons, now I'm in something I've heard of before. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, everyone's talking about that. So like, I know something about the thing this guy is selling. But in the other bin to the left there, I didn't know anything. So, Dragonlance. There's a lot of people who've told me about Dragonlance. So, like, as I'm going through this thing, I'm trying to figure out, like, do I know any of this stuff, and what of this stuff do I know about? And, like, you know what I mean? Like, what of this is interesting to me, and why is it interesting to me? Because it's all obviously interesting to the guy who brought it here. Yeah, there was a bunch of these TTRPGs that I just never heard of. I didn't know anything about, and I kind of even found it fascinating that there were so many TTRPGs that I just never heard of. Like, I don't know what Brave New World is, but apparently it's a game, right? So this guy's collection was so interesting to me that I actually ended up picking up a couple of his books. I picked up the AD&D second edition plus the character sheets from this guy. I'll take a look at those at the very end of this video if you want to hang out that long, but I really had a fun time just going through his entire collection, flipping through. This was the section where I was like, not only do I recognize these books, like, because I played with them, or so not only do I know them, but I recognize them. Like, I recognize the Eberron book, and I recognize the player's manual from 3rd edition. I kind of regret not picking this one up. I'm not gonna lie. I want the Eberron book now, and I kind of want Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition plus the Psionics handbook. Like, if I wasn't gonna let myself spend too much money at the convention because I have so many books at home that I'm already going through. And it just kind of felt bad, like, all right, I'm just going to spend a ton of money at a convention. So I limited myself to about $100, which isn't a lot for a convention, but I wanted to keep myself on some kind of budget because I knew that I'd come home with just too much stuff. So I only picked up the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition and the characters sheets, but now I think I want to try and find a 3rd edition book and a Eberron and 3.5 and all that. So I think this was one of the first times I was looking at someone's collection and kind of thinking about my own collection of books. There's a few people on my Discord and on my YouTube channel who have shamed me for putting highlighters in my books. And I have thought kind of steadily about that. You know, it's like, okay, that's an interesting perspective, right? Like, maybe I shouldn't be highlighting my books. Maybe I should treat them more like they are collector's items or things to be treasured. Because as I'm going through this guy's collection of books that are all really well kept, I was kind of wowed. You know, I was like, oh, this is neat that this person has kept these old books in such real, like, great condition. Even especially like the soft binding ones. I'd probably like to start doing the same with my own collection, and maybe I won't highlight the books anymore. I'll print out PDFs to do that with if I need to. I spent a lot of time in this guy's collection, just taking in everything that he had. But I'm going to go ahead and move on and take a look at some of the other booths around here. This game, Conquest, was a game that was being represented fairly well at the convention. They actually had a whole tournament for this war game skirmish game. There was a lot of these booths set up where someone had a game in Kickstarter or they were playtesting it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to play all of them. I got a chance to play a few of them, but I probably would need more time at the convention just dedicated to playtesting people's games. There was a few of them I really enjoyed playtesting, and I would have actually liked to play all of them if I had the time. There's a crabs in a bucket game here. I wanted to play this one because it seemed like it would be a good game for Riker to try because it uses just basic playing cards in the deck. All right, I'm going to head back into the war game room and check on Stephen and Landon, see how they're doing. Okay, so there's destruction happening. This helicopter seems to be a continual pest, and Landon is punishing Stephen with it. Before we got here, I was really worried about bringing Landon and Stephen to this because, like, it was my idea, and so I was kind of worried, like, okay, what if they come and they don't have a good time? Like, what if there's no games they're interested in? So I was just really happy at this point. Like, they're not only are they like playing, but like they seem to be having a good time. Like they're actually trying to beat each other in this Warhammer Old World game, and Landon is just beating the crud out of Stephen with this helicopter. And like. So I was having a great time. Like, okay, I'm wandering around doing my own thing, but they're also having a really good time playing Warhammer Old World. All right, so I'm gonna take off, leave them be, and go head out and check out the main dealer hall now. Bishop and I keep missing each other, so there was a part of me that was a little worried he wasn't having a good time, but I found out later on that he was having a great time. All right, so this is the main dealer hall. Here's a section of Dice Envy. They have so many different dice here. I actually have a whole video just going through all their dice. So I'm not going to spend too much time on them. I didn't actually get a chance to spend time going through each one of these tables because there was just so much stuff. And it was really interesting to actually engage with the different vendors. Like what brought them here, what they were selling. Are they from a tabletop gaming store? Like a lot of these booths are actually a local game store that has brought a section of their collection to the convention in order to sell it and also to promote their own game store. And I think some of them did a really good job of promoting their game store and making connections with other people at the convention. So this convention ended up being a way for people who are making their own games to connect with game stores who could sell their games. This game, Conquest, is a perfect example. It's a relatively new tabletop war game with a unique perspective. or a unique gameplay style. It can be played as both a rank and flank large army game or a skirmish game. You just remove the miniatures from the small bases there. But this was a game that was actually being sold at a couple of the local game stores. Joey, the woman who was running this booth, did a really good job of representing this company's game to the point where she actually got there to be tournaments here at the convention, so people can actually watch the game being played. I didn't actually get time to see it. I wanted to, but there was too many things to do in 2 days. The booth right next to hers is actually a booth run by a man who has a game store just south of where the convention was. So he came and he brought a few of the products that he sells. Some of this stuff is actually like this terrain here is like a unique type of terrain that's like it folds up and you can like throw it in your bag. He also has like these little miniature clips that you put on the bottom of the miniatures and it magnetizes them. It's a really unique design, and he's made both of these things. You see, like it's like a little spiral clip. So this guy Mason, who owns a game store, sells his own products in his game store, and he also, seems to be connecting with some of the other people who are making games here. Before I got here, I hadn't realized how much of a connection tool a convention can be. Like if you're developing a game, a tabletop game of some sort, a convention is actually a really good place to set up a booth, not just because you're going to like have people see your game, but because you can actually walk around the convention and get to know people who are store owners, or maybe they are, tournament leaders. You can network with people who are also interested in the same thing that you're interested in, and you can kind of, branch out. So I found a lot of these booths really interesting, and the games that people were selling, the games that people were making. This was a party drinking game. It's a little adult themed in some ways, but also you could just play it without drinking. There was all sorts of different things at the convention, like game related, to the point where I was looking at products that I just didn't even know existed, and I didn't know there was a need for this product. There was a few booths like this one that I just never got a chance to get into because people were always in this booth. I have no idea what they're selling. Over here was actually a person selling open and used board games where all the parts had been accounted for, and they're actually selling them in collections. So this was an interesting way. Like if I ever wanted to pick up like Bard Song or something, I could spend like $180 and get Bard Song with like all of its expansion packs. I thought that was actually a really cool way to sell like an older game, like with the expansion packs combined. Anyways, they did a really good job of kind of like, stacking things up in an interesting way, because I spent a little time going through these games just like, I don't know what this game is. I don't know what it is. I've never heard of it. But now that I'm seeing the entire collection of Bard Song, I'm a little bit interested. There were a few booths that I saw that I just didn't understand. Like I understood a couple of the products in the booth, but the rest of it, I didn't understand. Like, is this a collection of someone selling their own books? Is this from a game store? Like, I see something that I recognize, like, oh, Deck of Many Things. Oh, no, wait, no, it's Deck of Many Drinks. And I didn't understand, like, if it was a meta booth, are they... I couldn't understand the connection between these things, these books, like the novels. It seemed kind of like a bookstore at the convention. So this was one that, like, this booth in particular was confusing to me. I didn't understand it, but I also didn't get a chance to talk with the owner to understand more about it. So I just kind of took some footage and moved on. It was really interesting to see some of the competing booths, because there was booths that were selling very similar products to each other. For example, the dice. And they didn't really seem to mind competing with each other or having like a similar product that they were selling that someone else was selling nearby. I remember when I was a kid, I used to do trade shows. We used to sell rubber band guns. I was about 11 at the time, and I remember there was some shows we'd go to where someone else was selling rubber band guns as well, and it never really seemed to bother me. In fact, I think if anything, it was better for the business to have another competing booth there, because it gave people choices, and they'd either buy my product or the other guys. So I thought it was interesting that the tabletop gaming stores had similar types of competition, and it didn't seem to be an issue. I really love the hobby-adjacent crafting that I saw at the convention. Here someone's made dice towers, but they've taken like tiles and made mosaics out of them. So it's like a wholly unique type of dice tower. This whole spinning rack is filled with tokens that you can use in various board games. There's some for Wingspan, and then some kind of energy game. I don't know about Power Grid. I've never heard of Power Grid. And then like down at the bottom, there's a whole bunch for a kind of a war board game called Scythe. So I found it really interesting that someone actually takes time and energy to make these kind of craft token pieces for board games. And that they sell them here was also like, it was like, oh wow, I didn't even know anyone would be looking for this, but like they are apparently. I guess they're called meeples. I think I had known that and had forgotten. But I like just seeing this spinny rack here was really interesting to me because someone had created a product to solve an issue that I didn't really know was an issue. And I thought that was interesting because there was a lot of things like that in this dealer hall. Checking on Landon and Steven again. They are still destroying one another. It looks like that helicopter has finally been taken off the board, but now they're kind of in a full open skirmish in the middle of the map. I'm still, at this point, I'm just stoked that they're having such a good time playing with each other. And I'm trying to like tell Landon, like, look, don't let your dad win. Like, don't be nice. Don't let him win. Because if you beat him at this game, he will definitely want to play again. So it looks like Landon played a little aggressive, and he moved himself out into the open, and now he's having to run away, and Steven seems to be wrecking him. At this point, I could tell this was close to the end of their game, so I just wanted to hang out for a little while and see who won. I also finally caught up with Bishop at this point, so I got to ask him what he'd been up to and like what he played, what he's liking. So he was having a much better day today at the convention than he was yesterday on Friday. Friday, they were still setting up a lot of stuff, so, it was hard for him to really figure out what he was doing or what he wanted to do, but now he was actually getting to see real games go, and he was getting to, like, playing them, and he saw Landon playing in Warhammer against his dad, so he kind of wanted to play against me, so I was like, okay, cool, let's play. It was down to like a couple rolls. So here's Steven's about to like roll one of his last attacks to try and wipe out one of Landon's units. And you can see how intense Landon is. He's rocking back and forth in his chair.
One dice.
I killed one only out of all those dice I rolled?
Landon has a chance. He's going to try and escape, see if he can make it away. And Steven is attacking him from behind as Landon's units are running, and yeah, it didn't go well. So Steven actually won this game, and I now had to like shame Landon for losing against his dad.
Yeah, he won.
You let your dad win? I told you not to let your dad win. Landon, if he already won you, he's not going to be challenged by playing this with you anymore. You were supposed to win. If you win, he'd be frustrated and he'd want to get a game.
I don't need to play anymore. No, I won.
Yeah, there you go. He won. He beat it.
So now that their game was finished, Bishop asked me if I would like to play, and I said, yeah, sure. But there was already someone scheduled to play at this hour, so I didn't get to play with Bishop, but Bishop actually had a chance to play with another kid who's about his age. Steven and Landon had a whole bunch of raffle tickets they needed to fill out because the people who were running this Warhammer Old World game, they actually had a copy of the game they got from Games Workshop, and they were giving it away in the raffle over the weekend. So this is actually Bishop getting ready to start his own game, and I was actually happy he was playing against another kid and not just me. Like, he and I have a chance to play quite often with Marvel Crisis Protocol and things, but I think the fact that he actually got to play a kid who was about his age in this game was probably more engaging for him. I took a few minutes to head back over to the dealer hall to record some more footage. I got a lot of footage of dice, but I'm not going to waste time in this video showing it. I actually made an entire other video. If you want to look at all the Dice Envy dice, you can check that out. I might remember to put a link down in the description below. But their dice were pretty cool. For me, it's just a little bit expensive. I'm not a big dice person. I mean, I like the dice, but I'm not like, I don't want to spend $50 on a set of dice. There's other things I would rather spend money on than dice. This cup of duck was a cool idea. Basically, there's this massive duck, and the back end of it's just completely filled with dice. You can get a cup and scoop it out, and so you get like a ton of dice for about 25 bucks, and there's a bunch of randomness in here. This was probably how I would pick dice if I were going to get dice, but Steven and Landon finished filling out all the raffle tickets, and they wanted to head upstairs to go take a look at some of the games that were being play tested. Up on the second floor, there was a pretty small room with about 7 or 8 tables set up, and they had this place dedicated for game developers to come test their games. Each of the games that were being played here were in various stages of development. Some of them had made it past Kickstarter, some were still in Kickstarter, some were months or years away from even being close to being finished. But we had a chance to play a few of the different games here. I think I played fewer than the rest of them because I kept running around the convention trying to check on Bishop and different people and also get footage and stuff. But I had a chance to play about 3 or 4 of these different games. And I had various thoughts and feelings about the game. But this was also one of those places where I realized, like, I don't really know exactly how to be helpful with someone who's developing a game. Because, you know, a lot of people who are in this position of developing a game want feedback, but they also don't want to hear feedback. They kind of want to hear that their game is perfect. And so it becomes really difficult to interact with the developers of such products. I also learned that people who are making board games and tabletop RPGs don't want you to compare their games to any other games, whether that is a video game or another like tabletop game. It seems to be you're not supposed to do that. Like I don't know, maybe it's a faux pas or something, but for me, I find it very helpful to ask, like, oh, so is your game similar to this game? But those words are some kind of heresy or something. Or at least they seem to be very frustrating. This Tactile game is probably one of my favorite games from the convention. It is a strategy game that I don't even know what to compare it to, so I'm not gonna. But if you like strategy, like intense strategy games, just buy a copy. I think it's like $30 or maybe $36. It was really cool. This was the game we actually played at the very end of the convention. We waited a long time to try and get a spot at the table, but we finally did. It was the last thing we did at the end of Saturday night, and I'm so happy that we had a chance to play it. Some of the games we played at the convention, it was really easy to just tell the developer of the game, like, wow, you did a really good job. I've never heard of this game. It's fascinating. It's so fun to play. Awesome. But then some of the games that we played at this convention, it was hard to know exactly what to say because, you know, for example, the game that I'm playing right now, it's in an early stage of development. So I know what the creator is kind of trying to do with the game they're building, but I don't think it's happening. And so I want to be helpful and say, hey, I can see what you're trying to make, but I also want to be slightly critical to let them know they need to keep working, and that's a really difficult line to walk. This is a game I did not actually get a chance to play, so I really can't say anything about it. Landon and Steven had a chance to sit down and play this game, but I was going to head downstairs and check on Bishop and see how his Warhammer game was going. I'm heading down to the miniatures room to check on Bishop, see how his Old World game is going. But on my way over to the Old World, something caught my eye, something new. And that's kind of the problem that I had in the War Room. The tables kept changing. So as I'd come in, I'm like, wait, what's this? What are you guys doing? Are you guys playing some sort of Civil War game or it's a Revolutionary War game? What's happening here? And it was fascinating because that happened almost every time I came into the War Game room. There was something new being played on a table that I'd never seen before. And I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the game? How are they playing it? These miniatures look cool. But then I got to remind myself, don't get distracted. You came down here to check on Bishop. How's Bishop doing? All right, he's playing Warhammer Old World. I can't tell who's winning or losing. But hey, he's playing. He's having fun. Okay, let me go check out that Revolutionary game again because he seems to be doing fine. So I head back over to the Revolutionary game, and I get talking with this guy, Rick. And he's explaining to me, like, what's happened at the table, what the strategy is. Like, there's there's 4 different army groups that are facing off against each other. There's, like, 2 British and 2 American. So it's kind of like a 2-on-2 game. And I get the sense that the person who's playing on the left side of the Americans is trying to assault the farmhouse over to the left. And the person on the right side of the American side is trying to get around that fence line. But the problem is the British have sent in some sort of cavalry units over on the bottom corner here, And so he's like, hey, you can just come play as one of the British because the dude stepped out. But then it turns out that the guy who stepped out actually didn't step out, so he just gave me his spot, and now I'm playing as the Americans on the right-hand side. So then me and the guy over on the left-hand side of the table, we start kind of calculating and trying to figure out what we're going to do. So I ended up getting to play a round of a Revolutionary War game, and that wasn't even the reason I came down to the war game room in the first place. But it was cool. It was interesting enough that I was like, I wasn't previously interested in historical combat games at all. And just having gotten a sense of looking at the miniatures and how the game plays, I was like, oh yeah, I could totally get into this. Don't, Nate. Bad. Don't start jumping war games. I think that's my problem with some of the tabletop war games and even TTRPGs. I just like so many of them. I find a certain type of them very interesting, but miniature painting in general is fascinating to me, and so is the whole tabletop hobby. I love TTRPGs and I love war games, and jumping into this hobby in my 40s is really difficult because I kind of want to play it all. And so it means it's difficult for me to keep focus. But I got to head upstairs and check on Stephen and Landon in the playtester room. This was a game that we actually had a chance to play test. It was called From the Shadows. It was a competitive, cooperative monster hunting game. It's in some late stage of development. There were some things I liked and some things I disliked about it, but I didn't really have a chance to actually have a good conversation with the developer. So, Anyway, Stephen and Landon had finished up the game that they were playing, and now they asked me, hey, can we take a look around the rest of the convention? So I said, yeah, there's a few other rooms upstairs here. There's a war game room, an upstairs war game room, and there's a card game room. So let's take a tour around. And there's also the basement too, where they're playing the Adventures League games. I don't know why they put them in the basement, but they did. So I first took them over here to the war game room, and this is where Bishop and I had gone last night on Friday night, and they had a massive Risk game in here. It was huge. It spanned out. Here I'm going to throw some footage up of the massive Risk game, but it wasn't happening on Saturday. It was only happening on Friday night. It wasn't actually called Risk, but here you go. You can take a look at it. So this is a game that a guy made to kind of bolster the game Axis and Allies. So if you've played Axis and Allies, I guess this game is similar. I don't know anything about this game or Axis and Allies, but I guess this game is called World War II. Or something like that, the Great War. Anyways, if you look up Axis and Allies and you want to see more of it, this guy has made a modifier or a module that adds to it. So all these little units, in this massive board is something he and the people who love playing Axis and Allies made. Anyways, this is something they were doing up in the war game room where they're playing more simulation, board game type of war games. Back to Stephen and Landon. So I was taking them around, showing them the different things in the war game room. There was a ship fighting game. There was a bunch of people who just basically came up here to play games, and then a few people who were demoing games that they had made. So now we had a chance to look at the war game room, the upstairs version, and I was going to take Landon and Stephen over to look at the card game area. This was a room that was dedicated to people playing different types of card games. There were people playing Marvel Champions, puzzles, obviously, Magic the Gathering, Lorcana. It was kind of a room that was basically dedicated to people playing those games. So if you wanted to find someone who was playing those games, you could come hang out here and find someone to game against. Then we headed downstairs, down into the basement area where they have kind of relegated the people to play tabletop RPGs. So people are going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons and the Dungeon Adventure League. Anyways, there were time slots that you could put in for the Adventure Dungeon League. We had been scheduled for 2:00, and we just did not make that time. There were so many other things that we were doing that we didn't make it to the Adventures League. So we got down here into the basement area, and not only were people playing TTRPGs, but they were also playing board games and other games. So it was kind of just a general gaming area. And see that guy with the yellow backpack? That guy actually came up to us and said, hey, there are a couple of you guys, you want to try this game? And he let us try this game that he's been developing that I guess was a real game a while ago called Spy Island, and he and his friend are trying to remake it. We played it, and it was awesome. This is a game that Stephen got a chance to play. It's kind of like Scrabble and poker mixed together. I didn't actually get a chance to play it, but Stephen played it and liked it so much he bought a copy of it, so I'm probably going to get to play it sometime soon. As I mentioned earlier, there was a point early on in the convention that I was really worried that Steven and Landon weren't having a good time and that they were, here and maybe they would actually regret their time here. But by this point in the day, I actually realized, okay, Steven's actually enjoying himself. He's having a good time playing different games. At this point, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we actually hadn't eaten yet. So we took a break from the convention and walked down the street a little ways. We got some pizza at a local pizzeria. Same place that Bishop and I had been to on Friday. It's pretty good pizza. The footage you're seeing right now is actually towards the end of the convention. I actually didn't have any more footage that I took during the time that we were there. But as I mentioned, we got to play that tactile game towards the end of the night. We also got to play that From the Shadows game. There was a few games that we ended up play testing. The one thing that was kind of disappointing was that Steven and Landon didn't get to go back to the dealer hall before it closed at 6 o'clock. So there's a few things they might have wanted to pick up they didn't get to. I only picked up a couple things myself at the convention. As I mentioned, I was trying to not spend too much money. I know it's easy just to go to conventions and drop a few $100s, but I wanted to keep myself on a budget. One, because I already have so many games I have to be going through, and two, I end up thinking that I have more time than I do during a given week. So I picked up this dice for Bishop on Friday, and that's pretty much the only thing we got on Friday. On Saturday, as I mentioned, the dealer hall where they had the swap meet was really interesting to me, and I found a copy of Netrunner. I love deck building card games, and people have been recommending that deck building card game for a while, both on Reddit and also in my Discord community. So when I found a copy of that one and it was in pretty pristine condition, I picked that up for, I think it was $35. I also found a copy of Dungeon Crawl Classics, and they were selling it for $10 because it was like the last version of it. Like it may be like one version older than is currently in production. So I thought that was a good enough discount to get me a copy of that game. And the last book that I picked up was Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition Advanced, plus a character sheet that I found out actually goes with it. But I learned that sometimes the character sheets aren't designed for this one because there was a few different printings. Anyways, the very, very, very last thing I picked up was a card game called Booster Brats. This was actually a card game that I found very interesting. It was in the dealer hall. There was a gentleman named Daniel who was selling this game, and it's actually a game that he has made. I was inspired by it because I've noticed that Bishop is interested in drawing and creating things, and he's talked about being interested in like making his own game. So I really just wanted to support a small creator who was building like a unique game idea, because this is a collectible card game where it's going to get meta here, where the card game itself is about collecting cards. I found that to be such a cute idea. Like I don't know, like there was like a flying binder was one of the monsters in the game. The other thing was like the game is actually meant to be played in a binder. So it was just, all of it was really fascinating. So I picked up the 3 like starter boxes of the game because it comes with a few boosters. Anyways, I thought that was cool. So that was our general experience at the game convention. We had a fantastic time. Bishop had a great time from it. He was so engaged with the war games that he got to play that when we got home, we went to the game store and he actually took his own money and bought a massive Tyranid because he wants to start building a Tyranid army. I had picked up the Leviathan box about a year or so ago. So there's a bunch of Tyranid models he's going to be able to use. He's a bit snobbish with his paintings, so he's probably not going to accept that I have already painted some of the Tyranids, which is a bummer because I think I did a pretty good job on some of them. Yeah, you can see them in there, but I'm not going to make that the focus of this video. So at some point, he's going to be building his own Tyranid army, and I will probably be leaning into Space Marines. So anyways, it was a great convention. I'm so glad that we went. I'm going to be going again to the one in May, but September I probably won't be able to make it to. So if you have any questions or ideas or whatever about like the next time I go to the convention, I will probably be recording things like I did here. I actually had a really fun time trying to catalog our adventures there, and maybe I'll try and find a format to do that if it's a regular occurrence. All right, I think that's it for this video. I know this was a long one, but I kind of wanted to summarize a lot of the stuff we did. Oh, Steven and Landon, they had a really good time playing the Warhammer Old World, and they had a good enough time that they're actually going to, I think, come over and try and get in a game of Kill Team with us sometime maybe this week or next week. So I'm excited about that, right? Like it was really fun to bring our friends. You know, Landon is very much into tabletop RPGs. He plays with us every Saturday, and I think Friday as well. He's going to be playing with us. So he's interested in tabletop RPGs. But Steven is kind of, you know, generally more board games. And so I was really excited that he was interested in getting into a war game, because I had the suspicion that maybe that's what he would like, because he's not really a TTRPG guy. So there we go. That's the end now. God bless you. Have a great day. Let me know what you think of this video. If you'd like to see me do another one of these when I go to the May convention, I don't know. Just let me know in the comments or something. All right. God bless you. Have a good day.